In early 2025, the US government imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on all imported vehicles and automotive parts, a move that sent shockwaves through the entire industry. This wasn't just a policy change, it was a seismic shift that upended decades of established business practices and global supply chains. Almost overnight, the American auto industry was shaken to its core, as uncertainty and anxiety rippled from factory floors to corporate boardrooms. For decades, automakers had relied on seamless trade across the US, Canada, and Mexico, building a tightly woven network that kept costs down and production efficient. Suddenly, a financial wall replaced this open superhighway. The shock was immediate, and the consequences began to unfold rapidly. Carmakers faced a catastrophic surge in costs as cross-border supply chains were upended overnight. Production lines slowed, and some even ground to a halt as companies scrambled to adapt. NAFTA and its successor, the USMCA, had integrated North American manufacturing, allowing parts and vehicles to move freely and efficiently across borders. The new tariff shattered that model, forcing companies to rethink everything from sourcing to assembly, and even their long-term strategies for survival. The policy was meant to protect American jobs, but the immediate result was chaos, not revitalization. Factories struggled to adjust, and workers faced an uncertain future. The auto industry's complex ecosystem, suppliers, logistics, assembly plants, depends on stability and predictability. Disruption at any point sends shockwaves throughout the entire system. The tariff introduced costly instability, making it harder for companies to plan, invest, and grow. The ripple effects were instant, impacting not just big automakers, but thousands of suppliers, logistics firms, and dealerships across the country. Every link in the chain felt the strain. The entire industry braced for a new, uncertain reality, unsure of what the next day would bring. For one company in particular, Stellantis, this was more than a challenge, it was an existential threat. The company's future in North America now hung in the balance. The crisis had found its ground zero, and the world was watching to see how Stellantis, and the entire industry, would respond. Stellantis, the global automaker and parent to iconic American brands like Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, found itself at the epicenter of a crisis that would shake the entire industry. When new tariffs hit, Stellantis was hit hardest among Detroit's Big Three, with its operations grinding to a near halt almost overnight. Over 40% of its U.S. sales came from vehicles built in Canada and Mexico, a central pillar of its business model that suddenly became a major vulnerability. Iconic models like Ram pickups assembled in Mexico and shipped north, and Chrysler Pacificas, produced in Canada and beloved by families across America, were suddenly at the heart of a crisis, with production lines stalling and workers facing uncertainty. Unlike its rivals, Stellantis's cross-border dependence ran deeper, with supply chains stretching across North America and a little room for quick adaptation. When exemptions expired, the company was left fully exposed, unable to shield itself from the full brunt of the tariffs. A brief reprieve and minor offsets offered little comfort, failing to address the deep structural problems at play. The impact was immediate and severe. Chrysler's Windsor plant shuttered, putting the Pacifica's future in serious doubt and sending shockwaves through the workforce. Dodge's legendary muscle cars, built in Canada, faced steep price hikes that alienated loyal buyers and threatened the brand's reputation. Ram's production slowed dramatically, risking precious market share to Ford and GM as customers looked elsewhere. Jeep, too, faced stalled production and severe supply chain delays, with parts stuck at borders and assembly lines idled. The very availability of these beloved vehicles was now in jeopardy, leaving dealers and customers alike wondering when, or if, things would return to normal. The financial hit to Stellantis was nothing short of brutal, sending shockwaves through the entire automotive industry. The sudden 25% tariff threatened to slash annual earnings by up to 75%, a staggering blow for a company of Stellantis's size and global reach. In response, the company withdrew its financial guidance for 2025, admitting it could no longer predict its own performance in such a volatile environment. First quarter sales dropped 14%, a decline that rattled both employees and investors. Analysts estimated the tariff would add a staggering $42 billion in annual costs, putting immense pressure on Stellantis's already strained finances and forcing the company to reconsider its global strategy. The crisis quickly reached the top. CEO Carlos Tavares was ousted after failing to reassure the board and investors. Chairman John Elkann stepped in as interim CEO, tasked with steering the company through its most turbulent period in recent memory. Stellantis shares tumbled, erasing billions in market value almost overnight and shaking investor confidence to its core. The panic quickly spread to rivals like GM and Volkswagen, who also suspended their forecasts, fearing similar fallout from the new tariffs. The US government's policy had destabilized the entire auto sector, with Stellantis bearing the brunt of the chaos and uncertainty. Amid mass layoffs and plant shutdowns, Stellantis announced a $2.26 billion dividend payout to shareholders, drawing sharp criticism from the United Auto Workers and the public. The move was seen as a slap in the face to workers, especially after a year of falling profits and growing job insecurity. In just a matter of months, the company's fortunes had turned with stunning speed, leaving its future more uncertain than ever before. The crisis hit workers hardest. Thousands lost jobs as Stellantis halted operations at key plants in Canada and Mexico. Nearly 7,000 workers were suddenly unemployed, their lives upended by a distant trade dispute. US factories also slowed or stopped production, unable to get parts or absorb skyrocketing costs. In April, 900 US workers were temporarily laid off, sending shockwaves through manufacturing towns. The closures rippled through communities, hurting suppliers, logistics firms, and local businesses. When paychecks stopped, entire towns felt the pain. Consumer spending dried up, and local economies faltered. The layoffs reopened wounds with the United Auto Workers, who accused Stellantis of breaking promises to reinvest in American facilities. Workers felt betrayed, caught between corporate strategy and government policy. The crisis exposed the fragility of America's industrial heartland. The tariffs' impact quickly reached American consumers across the country. New Jeeps, Dodges, Rams, and Chryslers arrived at dealerships with sticker prices thousands higher than before. A Jeep Compass now started well over $30,000. A Ram 1500 often exceeded $50,000. For many families, new cars became unaffordable, pushing them out of the market. Brand loyalty was tested as buyers turned to Ford, Chevy, or the used car market. Once lost, customer loyalty is hard to regain, threatening Stellantis' future in the US. The crisis risked severing generational bonds with these iconic brands. Stellantis wasn't just losing sales, it was losing trust built over decades. Facing existential threats, Stellantis is betting on a rapid pivot to electric vehicles. By building EVs with US-sourced parts, the company hopes to escape tariff pain and reinvent itself. Iconic models like Jeep, Dodge, and Ram are slated for electric makeovers, but Stellantis lags behind Tesla, Ford, and GM in EV tech and infrastructure. Catching up will require billions in investment and a total overhaul of manufacturing. The other option, reshoring production to the US, is equally daunting. Building or converting plants takes years and massive capital, with higher labor costs threatening to erase tariff savings. There are no easy fixes. Every path is risky, expensive, and uncertain. The clock is ticking, and the company's future hangs in the balance. Stellantis must choose wisely, or risk fading from the American landscape. As of June 2025, Stellantis is fighting for survival. The company faces layoffs, cost cuts, and a hostile trade environment while racing to electrify its lineup. Chrysler in particular faces an existential threat, with no clear plan for its key models. The futures of Dodge, Ram, and Jeep are also uncertain as affordability and availability wane. This is more than a corporate crisis. It's a battle for a piece of America's industrial and cultural heritage. The outcome will affect not just workers and shareholders, but every American car buyer. The Stellantis crisis shows how quickly trade policy can reshape lives and limit choices. It's a cautionary tale about the risks of protectionism and the fragility of global supply chains. The fate of these storied brands now depends on bold decisions and the enduring spirit of the American worker.